Providers in EI Hub refers to a company, agency, or independent therapist who functions as their own agency. The provider menu is located on the left side of the EI Hub homepage. Use the expansion arrow to view all submenus specific to providers. Submenus for provider entry and management includes provider lookup, provider add, and provider reports. In this training, we'll be covering each of these areas. Let's begin with the provider lookup. A user's role determines access to the provider lookup functionality. Individuals with the appropriate access can search for providers using various data fields listed in the table. Individual providers will be taken directly to their profile page in the system by accessing the lookup functionality, but cannot perform searches or view other providers' records. You may use any of the search criteria to return a list of providers. Consider modifying the search criteria if a provider is not found after an initial search. For example, consider using the first 4 letters of a provider's last name instead of the full last name. If no search criteria are entered, the system will return a list of all providers in the system. Use the ascending, descending controller for column sorting. Users seeking to filter, customize, and/or print provider information should consider creating a report from the Provider Report menu. The list may be exported into Excel format by selecting the Excel button. When search results populate, users also have the option to edit an existing provider record. To add a provider's profile to EI Hub, select the Add submenu from the Provider menu. Editing and access rights are determined by an individual's role in the system. To set up a provider with basic demographic information, enter any new provider coming into the system into the Basic Demographics panel. Enter information for all required fields, including the provider type. For example, is this an agency or an individual provider functioning as an agency? Also enter the provider status in early intervention and the provider's name. Required fields are indicated by the asterisks. Select the Submit button to save your entry. When clicked, the system keeps the information in the EI Hub database, and the record updates the Basic Demographics panel. An agency contact or an individual functioning as a provider can be added to the Contact and Identifying Information panel. The provider type, provider status, and provider category are some of the fields that pre-populate and are read only. Fields with asterisks indicate required fields. Once all required information is entered, select Submit. The Provider Address panel houses the Provider Address Grid. Use this grid and panel to enter, search for, edit, and sort the provider's address information. Multiple addresses can be stored. For example, the address can be the provider's billing address, office, or home. If the provider relocates, you'll need to enter an end date for and make inactive the old address. After end dating and inactivating the old address, a new address can be entered. The grid houses the address type, displays whether the information is masked, the address start and end dates, status, and more. Click the Add Provider Address button to add a new provider address. To edit an existing address, select the Edit button. To export your search results in an MS Excel spreadsheet, select the Excel button. Only certain user roles will be able to delete, not inactivate, but delete an existing address. Let's briefly go over what it looks like to add a new address from within the Provider Address Grid. When a user selects the Add Provider Address button, this is what they will see. Begin entering information and making appropriate selections from the address fields and drop-downs. Any field with an asterisk is a required field. After entering the address, validate the address entered by clicking the Address Validate button. EI Hub ensures all addresses are correct by assessing the date entered against the USPS address. The system prompts an address validation message allowing you to accept, change, or cancel the USPS address validation suggestion. Please note, address validation is required to submit an address. A faint checkbox appears next to the blue Address Validate button indicating the address has been validated. The address must only be validated once. To save your entry, click the Submit button. When clicked, the system keeps the information in the EI Hub database, and the record updates in the Provider Address panel. Use the Personal Phone Number panel and grid to enter, edit, sort, and search for a provider's phone number. For example, the provider's billing or office phone can be entered. If the provider's phone number information changes, you'll need to enter an end date for the previous number and add a new phone number. Use the NPI information grid and table to maintain provider NPI numbers. Use the Edit button to make corrections or end date an NPI entry. Then add any additional NPI numbers obtained as appropriate. Let's move to the next tab of a provider's profile, the Insurance Info tab. Providers can update their affiliations with insurance carriers within the Insurance Info tab and panels. This tab also includes the Medicaid panel to capture all Medicaid provider IDs and recertification dates. To add an insurance information record, select the Add Insurance Information button. The Add Insurance Information pop-up panel appears, allowing users to enter information such as the name of the insurance carrier, the insurance provider ID number, and participation start and end dates. To search through the results grid for a specific insurer, enter a keyword into the search bar. To edit or delete an existing insurance information record, click the Edit or Delete buttons. The ability to edit and delete are based on user roles. Click the Excel button to export your results in an MS Excel spreadsheet. The Services tab collects and displays information about a provider's approved services. The Provider Service Grid captures the service type, the service model, for example, service coordination, the service start and end dates, and the provider's specific service or catchment area. Select the Add a Provider Service Record to add service information. To edit an existing provider service record, click the Edit button. To delete an existing provider service record, click the Delete button. Please note, the ability to edit and delete are based on user role. The Service Sites tab includes 4 panels for collecting and updating information about the licenses and certifications held by individuals at the service site or agency. The Service Sites grid contains a record of the provider's approved service sites. Providers use the Service Sites license grid to maintain a record of their service site licenses. Providers with approved service sites use the CPR certification grid to maintain a record of their CPR certified staff. Lastly, providers with approved service sites use the Service Site Certification Grid to maintain a record of their site certifications. After a certification expires, enter an expiration date for that certification by editing the certification and adding a new certification with the renewal information. Each panel allows users to add, search for, export, and edit or delete information housed in each panel. Please note, the ability to edit and delete are based on user roles. The Document tab enables providers to search for and view documents uploaded to a provider's record. The table on the panel summarizes the document area, document type, document name, and the date the document was added. Use the Report Filter section to narrow your search. Let's pivot to provider reports. There is one provider report, the Central Directory. The Central Directory is a view-only report showing the latest information on all providers. From this report panel, users can filter, search for, and export provider information. This concludes our brief presentation on the provider menu.